It has been called the most hyped tech product of the early 21st century, predicted to completely transform our cities. What was that product and why did it fail?
The Rorschach inkblot test has shaped our view of human personality. How's it been used over the years?
Voorpret is a Dutch word that literally translates as pre-fun. What is it and how can it make you happy?
And finally, in this episode, we tell the story of the Scream, a painting so iconic that it's become an emoji.
Hello and welcome to REMORANDOM, a celebration of everything interesting. I'm Remo Frey.
And I'm Claudia Chanshaw.
Claudia.
Remo.
All right, so next week I'm going away.
Well, where are you going?
With my wife and meeting my son who's traveling from West Australia, and we're all going to the Netherlands initially, where
Wow.
my daughter's lived for nigh on 10 years, and she turns 30 this year. So we are going to mark that celebration by hiring a camper van, and with her partner Gijs, so Gijs, Lola, myself, and Melanie and Roman, the five of us in a camper van driving the west coast of Spain and Portugal.
We don't know. Be like the Griswolds.
We don't know where exactly. I've asked ChatGPT a couple of times to help out with an itinerary.
Excellent adventure.
Anyway, it's going to be great. Haven't done anything like that with them for a couple of years. So, but something to look forward to, which has a word, a Dutch word, actually. And that is the word Voorpret. And I was going to talk about that later, but I might talk about it now. But you're traveling too. Before I get into that, you're off again?
I am. I'm off again. This time I'm going to Hong Kong. I'm taking a group of art lovers to Hong Kong Art Week. So we're going to be doing Art Basel, Art Central, going to M+, with this most amazing Walpay exhibition on. Very excited.
Yes.
The more I read the itinerary, I wrote the welcome letter yesterday and I was excited just reading it.
The more Voorpretty you become. But
I do. Very Voorpretty.
So language is useful because it can shape thought, right? So if you pay attention to concepts that don't translate directly into English, they can give us kind of insights into another society's philosophy. So as mentioned, the Dutch word Voorpret, it literally translates to pre-fun, and it references the pleasant anticipation of the forthcoming event. But it's not just the looking forward to something in which the focus is on the future. It's actually more about the here and now pleasure that comes in the preparation, the making of lists, the researching, the checking guidebooks, the online research. In my case, asking ChatGPT to organise the whole trip for us, please. What you're going to see, what you're going to do, what you're going to eat. So it's all kind of the pleasure in planning and the anticipation. So the adopting this Voorpret mindset can actually improve your happiness. Writing things down, making lists, scheduling, taking time to anticipate. And the research shows that we do gain a lot more before a big event, whether it's a trip or an occasion, your wedding.
Fancy dress party.
We get a lot more before than after. In 2007, professors and psychologists Leif van Boven, sounds a bit like leaf blower, but anyway, Leif van...
Oh, I thought it was bovine.
and Laura Ashworth studied the impact anticipation has on our feelings and found the connection to be a lot stronger than retrospection. So this became super relevant during the COVID-19 pandemic because people couldn't do anything. So they spent a lot of time planning what they were going to do once the lockout was lifted or they could get back outside and doing stuff again. So it's a very positive hopefulness for the future. It's a very powerful predictor of your emotional state stuck where you are right now, whether that's a global pandemic or something else. So the lesson here that we learn from the Dutch and the word Voorpret is that you should try to stay hopeful and make some plans. That's the secret. Make some plans. So
Planning makes you happy. Voorpret. Yeah. I like that. I'm going to use that word in a sentence every day.
Great.
Voorpret. Voorpret. Here's another word for you. Rorschach.
Oh, sounds good too.
Yeah, in 1917, while working alone on a remote Swiss asylum, psychiatrist and also artist Hermann Rorschach devised an experiment to probe the human mind. So he was a bit of a thinker. For years, he'd grappled with the theories of Jung and Freud, and he put a lot of thought into something, and he came up with the Rorschach test. And it's a psychological test where the subjects look at a symmetrical set of ink blots, and then they read into that whatever they will, and whatever they see is recorded and analysed. So some psychologists use the test to examine somebody's personality characteristics, emotional functioning, and it's been employed to detect underlying thought disorders, particularly when people don't really open up emotionally to you. But the use of this idea of ambiguous designs to assess somebody's personality isn't new. Leonardo da Vinci and Botticelli were exercising that years ago. And in 1921, after studying 300 mental patients and 100 control subjects, Mr. Rorschach wrote a book called Psychodiagnostic, and that formed the basis of his famous inkblot test. Now, after he experimented with several hundred of them, he narrowed it down to a set of 10 that he thought were really quite cracker. Now, poor old Mr. Rorschach suffered a ruptured appendix and passed away after writing the book about a year later. But the creation grew and it became part of culture. So the test made its way to the United States, and there it took on a life of its own. It was co-opted by the military after Pearl Harbor. It was a fixture at the Nuremberg trials and in the jungles of Vietnam. It also became an advertising staple. It became a bit of a Hollywood cliche, inspiration for people like Andy Warhol. And the test was given to millions of defendants, job applicants, parents in custody battles, people applying for job, those with mental illness, and it's still used today. Even the Australian artist Ben Quilty did an interesting take on the Rorschach test. He would apply thick oil paint onto a canvas, and then he'd take a second unpainted canvas and press it against the first one to create an artwork from the shape that had emerged. Now, all of this talking about Rorschach reminds me of an episode of Get Smart, Remo. And in this episode, Maxwell Smart's there, and the doctor shows him a series of ink blots. And the doctor says, look, I want you to tell me what these remind you of. And Maxwell Smart looks at the first one and he says, a man and a woman hugging. And he says, next, shows him another one. And Max says, another man and a woman hugging. And then he shows him a third one. And Maxwell says, a man and a woman kissing. And the doctor says to him, Mr. Smart, you seem to show a definite preoccupation with men and women hugging and kissing. And Max replies, me? You're the one with the weird picture collection.
Well, we only got to 3. Goodness knows what 10 would have been, right? A man and a woman having a cigarette in bed.
A man and a woman kissing.
It's funny.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
See, I learned everything I know from afternoon TV.
I knew you would pull a pop culture reference in there just to delight us all. Now for something completely different. This has got nothing to do with pop culture, but have you know what a Segway is, don't you? Not like a Segway.
Oh, we're talking about a Segway as in da-da-da-da, and now we're moving on. Oh, no. You're talking about those vehicles that you ride on and you go through the streets standing up.
That, park rangers use or security guards on golf courses or whatever.
Yes.
So it uses this kind of gyroscopic method of keeping you balanced. They cost $100 million to develop. It's a complex bundle of hardware, software. It mimics the human body's ability to maintain its balance. So it also was the most hyped product of the early 21st century. I don't know if you remember, but there was a time when if you went to Amazon.com website, there in the header there was a little kind of guy on a Segway with a link to, I guess a Segway you could buy, because Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, was a big investor in Segway. He was only one of the high-profile backers of the inventor, Dean Kamen, who thought that this was literally going to change the way cities were designed, going to change the way we all moved from A to B. Anyway, backing up a little bit, the project was codenamed Ginger after the Fred Astaire's dance partner, Ginger Rogers. And it was this kind of secret development by this genius, geeky engineer called Dean Kamen. He introduced the Segway on Good Morning America, the TV program, in 2001, declaring that he believed that the Segway would do for walking what the calculator did for the pad and pencil. He was a famous inventor. I actually used to see him at the tech conference quite often. He was always there, always working on one wacky idea after another. But he developed this a bunch of interesting machines for the health industry, including this thing called the iBot wheelchair, which was this 6-wheeled machine that enabled disabled people to go up and down stairs as well as on flat. And also it elevated them so that they were much higher than they would normally have been sitting in a wheelchair, which kind of changed the sort of psychology of being wheelchair bound, because it brought you up more to the level of someone who was standing on their own 2 feet, So how talking to someone in a wheelchair, you're always talking down to anyway. So it was
exactly.
It was a very successful product, but he decided that he would take the technology that he used in that and take it to market with this consumer product. As I say, not just Bezos, but a whole raft of heavyweight investors and supporters decided that this was going to be a big deal. John Doerr, this renowned US venture capitalist, got involved. Steve Jobs from Apple thought it was going to be bigger, quote unquote, bigger than the internet. Such was the hype that even before the product was released, there was an episode of South Park devoted to making fun of the hype. There's a clip of that online you can link to from the QR code in the book. It didn't conquer the world, needless to say. It was like years later, the Google Glass, or many years before, the Tucker automobile. It was one of those products that never quite lived up to its hype. But you do see them around, law enforcement, tourism. When we went to the centre of Australia, there were tours where people could hop on a Segway and go around Uluru. So you do see them out there, but they're a bit nichey. And certainly not the thing that's changing the way cities are designed. The Segway Inc., the company that makes Segway, was acquired by a British business guy, Jim Heselden, in 2009. And the tragic and ironic thing is that he died a year later. He plunged from a cliff into the river wharf while riding his, you guessed it, Segway.
Oh, no.
He was walking his dog. He was trying to get out of the way of another dog walker, and he just, pressed the wrong button and ended up falling to his death. So that's one of those kind of morbid, I'm not going to call it a fun fact, but...
no, that's horrible. That's tragic.
Horrible, tragic fact. So the company got sold to a Chinese robotics company called Ninebot, and I think they took the technology and moved it more in the direction of electric scooters. So, so depending on who you ask about Segways, they're either a cautionary tale about tech hype or it's just an innovative product that was a bit too early or didn't quite make its mark. So there's your Segway for you.
Wow, that's an interesting segue. I reckon they should have invested in Marty McFly's hoverboard from Back to the Future. That's what they should have done.
Well, those people on those in the water on those foil things that I still can't quite work out how they work, but
yeah, they're weird, aren't they?
They are very weird looking.
Well, here's a segue for you. It just is okay. I'm segueing right over here to the world of art. And you know the painting, The Scream, famous painting.
Yes.
That's the one. The Scream by Norwegian artist Edvard Munch, and the painting depicts a figure standing on a bridge, and there's a turbulent, colourful, deeply coloured sky in the background, and the figure is shown in extreme state of distress, distorted face, hands at the side of the head. Person is actually said to be Munch. So there's not only one Munch, The Scream. There are actually 5. There are 3 paintings, a pastel and a lithograph that were created between 1893 and 1917. And it forms part of a series of paintings called Frieze of Life. Now, many historians have interpreted the painting as a representation of the artist's inner turmoil and anxiety, maybe related to his experiences with mental illness. In fact, poor old Munch was confronted with death at a very early age. His mum died of tuberculosis when he was only 5. He lost one of his sisters to the same disease when he was 13. Shortly after, one of his sisters suffered from severe depression and was committed for life. And his brother died suddenly of pneumonia only a few months after his marriage. So really, that poor family had a rough trot. So what does the painting itself actually represent? And now Munch put an excerpt in his diary that really explains what it's about. He said, on the 22nd of January, 1892, I was walking along the road with 2 friends. The sun was setting. I felt a wave of sadness. The sky suddenly turned blood red. I stopped, leaned against the fence, tired to death, gazed out over the flaming clouds like blood and swords, the blue-black fjord and city. My friends walked on. I stood there, quaking with angst. I felt as though a vast, endless scream passed through nature. So contrary to popular belief, the scream doesn't come from the figure, but from nature. And the figure appears to be frightened and is covering his ears to muffle the deafening sound. According to some scientists, the reference might conceivably be linked to the violent eruption in 1883 of Krakatoa, the Indonesian volcano, and that eruption caused such a deafening noise it was the loudest sound ever heard on Earth. The scream had a big impact on popular culture. If you've seen the 1990 Christopher Columbus film Home Alone, the posters have little Macaulay Culkin going like that.
Yep.
So it could be a reference to the scream, or maybe that scene where he's got the bracing effect of aftershave on his face and he's going, ah! It was also echoed in the film The Scream, a horror series, which is masks based on the painting. And as you can imagine, there are heaps of parodies out there. But there's even a scream emoji.
I think we've all seen that.
I think we have. And we know how it feels too, don't we?
Face screaming in fear. I think I've got the code. It's U1F631 in case you're, looking for the details.
So if I press that into my keyboard, I'm going to get that emoji. Okay.
It's actually got hands up to a face and then a blue head. So I suppose you blood rushing from your head or into your head. But yeah, no, that's great. I've seen pictures of kind of dirty washing arrayed so it looks like the picture. Scream. I've seen, Homer Simpson scream.
Oh, yes.
Lego guy screaming. Waldo screaming. Everybody screams. We all scream for ice cream.
That's right.
Couldn't resist. All right. Well, that's a mixed bag. We've had Voorpret.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it's
Good segues.
radically random. Good segue into the Segway.
Yep.
So
Like it.
time now to probably segue into our conclusion. And so that's it for this episode of REMORANDOM. Everything interesting. Subscribe to our show or watch us on Spotify or YouTube. And what else, Claudia?
And you can order copies of the books at remorandum.com, and we'd love you to contact us. You might have great ideas for stories or interesting thoughts. You can email hello@remorandum.com with fabulous ideas for more topics. Love to hear from you.
Currently compiling a list for Memorandum number 5, so lots of room for your stuff. See you then. Thanks, and happy Voorpret, Claudia. See you after your trip.
Voorpret. Bon voyage.
Bye.